being a mom has made me a better legislator, especially having a son with disabilities.
How has that affected being a representative?
It's really helped inform my votes and my priorities here in Congress.
Hello, I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary. This week, the highest-ranking Republican women in the House of Representatives, Washington State's Cathy McMorris Rodgers. She talks to us about her role in Congress, as well as some of her legislative priorities.
Representative McMorris Rodgers, you are the fourth ranking in the Republican leadership, and you chair the Republican Conference. Explain to our viewers, please, what that means.
Sure. It's an honor to chair the Republican Conference. This is a position that I'm elected to by my peers, by the 242 Republicans currently serving in the House of Representatives. It means that every day I am sitting down with the Speaker, the Majority Leader, the Whip, the top four of us sit down every day as we think through the strategy, the legislative priorities, as well as how we communicate with our members and to America. So it's really being at the forefront of everything that is happening in the House of Representatives and being a part of figuring out that strategy.
You've been here since 2004.
Yes.
And you have three children whom the first you didn't have when you first entered Congress, right? So you were pregnant several times, crossing the country, on a weekly basis, and plus whatever other travel you had, but going back home to Washington just about every week of the year. How did you do it, and how do you continue to do it?
I can assure you, when I was growing up on our orchard and fruit stand in Kettle Falls, it's a small town in eastern Washington, I never would have dreamed that one day I would be elected to Congress, the 200th woman ever to serve in the United States House of Representatives. I was 35 and single and met Brian the summer after I was elected, and we got married, and yes, we've had three children. He's retired from the Navy. He flew for the Navy and retired, and he's super dad now. So he's the one that day in and day out is really raising or at home with the kids. And he'll tell you it's harder than anything he ever did in the Navy. But it's also such an honor for me to be able to serve. And he's a big part of making this possible. And I think that for being a working mom, it's not that different than millions of other working moms in America, right? And
but isn't it, it's got to be, I mean, especially, it'd be one thing if you were from Maryland and you could just drive home at night. But
yes.
With three kids and living in Washington State and commuting from one Washington to the other Washington.
It is a long commute. I've been looking for that quick route, and it takes 7-8 hours on a good day to get from Washington, D.C. to Spokane, Washington. When Cole was first born, we would just go back and forth together a lot as a family. It got a little more complicated when school started, and the kids now are 10, 6, and 3. Cole was born with an extra 21st chromosome, Down syndrome. So that has also, especially at the beginning, figuring out the therapist and all of the support that he needed at the beginning. So you have a team here in D.C., a team in Spokane. And when he started school, we made the decision to move the family to D.C. I tried having the kids in Spokane and going to school in Spokane. Cole went through a tremendous program in Spokane called the Guild School, Birth to 3, and then got into the public schools. And I just found it was too much time apart. And thankfully, Brian and the kids now are with me in D.C. during the school year. So it means most mornings I can help get the kids ready for school, and I don't go out every evening, just to be able to carve out some family time for us. And that's the way that we're keeping our family together. and then go
that
home.
makes it much. I had
Yes.
the image that you were flying, that they were back home,
Right.
but
So
that makes it much easier.
It's allowing us to be together as a family. It's you know, it's harder in the sense that so many of our extended family and friends are in Spokane. So we look forward to the summers when they can be in Spokane for an extended time and really spend that time with our family.
You talk a lot about being a mom. How has that affected being a representative? And you also talk a lot about, not having fair discourse, quiet, thoughtful discourse between the parties about policies. How does that all work together?
Well, first, I love being a mom. And I feel like I came like that close to missing out on it. And it's just the most amazing thing in the world, is bringing a new life into the world, a baby, and then watching these kids grow. And so I love that part. And I also believe that being a mom has made me a better legislator, especially having a son with disabilities. So we have Cole, and then I have 2 daughters. But it's really helped inform my votes and my priorities here in Congress. It's because of Cole and some of the experiences that we've had firsthand that I'm better informed on what it really means to go through early intervention and to work on IEPs, the Individualized Education Plan for a student with disabilities, and to sit down and have those meetings. It also has informed me and how I think about healthcare. I've had my own personal experiences. So, like anyone, we're a product of our own experiences, and I bring that to my work here on Capitol Hill. But it has I believe it's really had a positive impact on my work here.
We will get in a moment to the ABLE Act and ABLE 2.0, which you sponsored and got through Congress. But can you point to anything other than that has your stamp on it? I'm thinking about your meetings, your daily meetings with the leadership. Is there any issue that you messaged in a particular way that got out there?
Well, I've certainly done a lot. I represent Fairchild Air Force Base. It's the largest tanker base in America. I've served on the Armed Services Committee, and then I married Brian, who is a Navy retiree, former aviator, and I have, for many years now, co-chaired the Military Family Caucus and have raised awareness on issues important to our military families. I co-chair it with Sanford Bishop. He's a Democrat out of Georgia, represents Fort Benning, and he's traveled to Fairchild several times. I've been down to Fort Benning. This was a caucus that we put together to put a microphone in front of our military families and highlight many of the issues that they face, recognizing that when someone joins the military, it's not just an individual commitment, but it's a commitment that the entire family makes. And you think about, in recent years, the multiple deployments that families have endured and other challenges. So that's been an area where I have really spent some time and raised awareness and brought some of those issues to the forefront around the leadership table. And then there's issues back home. I serve on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and I'm a leader in promoting hydropower. I also,
Are you for privatization of it? Of hydropower? There's a lot of talk.
Well, not of Bonneville Power Administration. There's both. I'm a big promoter of public power, Bonneville Power, and then there's also a lot of private investment. We could double hydropower in America. It is the largest renewable in the country. Clean, reliable, affordable, and we could double hydropower in America without even building a new dam. Only 3% of the dams actually produce electricity. And with new technology, improved fish ladders and turbines, we're seeing the record salmon returns, and we're also seeing the possibility to expand hydropower. So that's an issue that I continue to promote. In the West, we've seen catastrophic forest fires. Seems like every year they're only getting worse. And I have been certainly promoting better forest management, so we have healthier forests, and then some fixes to funding the fighting of forest fires. Because unfortunately...
More funding, you mean?
More funding, yes. Well, because we're robbing from our forest management accounts within the Forest Service couple of years ago, we spent over half of the Forest Service budget on fighting fires rather than actually managing these millions of acres that the Forest Service owns.
So tell me about ABLE 1 and 2.
ABLE. Yes. I was so excited to be a part of this legislation. So the ABLE Act, it stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And it allows an individual with disabilities, a family that has a child with disabilities, to set aside money, tax-free, set up a tax-free savings account, similar to a 529 for saving for college or an IRA saving for retirement. So this would be for a child. And just as an example, when Cole was born, 10 years ago now, and we were getting the news that he had that extra 21st chromosome, and in the course of that conversation, and it was a whole team of people around us, I remember them saying, and don't put any assets in his name, because he might need to qualify for one of the programs, one of the government programs in the future. And it's overwhelming news when you get this diagnosis and you're processing. And I contend that if they told parents upon the birth of any child, the likelihood that, they might have juvenile leukemia, or the likelihood that there's going to be heart issues, or, all this long list, it would be overwhelming to any parent. But that's where I was. That's what they were laying upon me. But they said, don't put any assets in his name. And I just felt like that was such a wrong message to be sending new parents that were so excited to have this baby, ready to sacrifice and do everything we can so that this child would have every opportunity possible to say, don't put any assets in his name, right? And it was because of the way the laws are currently structured. And so the ABLE account allows for a family to set up a tax-free savings account without jeopardizing these other
savings
benefits.
For what though? What can the kids use
okay,
it
so
for?
yeah, so after they finish school, it would be savings for, it could be education, transportation, housing. It's so that they could live more independently without jeopardizing some of the other benefits that they want to access. And we worked for 7 years to get the ABLE account approved. It passed last Congress and was signed into law. We had more co-sponsors on this legislation than any other bill in the House and the Senate. It took a lot of work. It was a large coalition, Republicans and Democrats coming together. I worked very closely with Senator Bob Casey, Amy Klobuchar. In the Senate, it started out with Patrick Kennedy, and then others that were a part of making this happen.
Do you see your son working and supporting himself as an adult?
Well, that would be my dream for him. Oftentimes when I'm touring different businesses, I'm thinking, okay, is this something that Cole could do? It's exciting to see those with disabilities going to college now more often, as well as being given that opportunity to work. So now we've introduced ABLE 2.0, which is a package of bills that builds upon the ABLE Act. And we need to be addressing some of the barriers for those with disabilities to work. And part of this is
they're huge, because I read that only 17.9% of disabled people worked last year.
And that number hasn't changed in 40 years. And it is an untapped resource in this country. We need to focus on the ability. We need to focus on what an individual can do and what they can offer, rather than just saying, okay, you have a disability and we're going to sign you up for this program.
But why is it must be illegal under the ADA to discriminate against people with disabilities in the workplace, right?
It's well-intentioned programs. You take some of these programs, you take Medicaid, for example. You can't have more than $2,000 in assets. And that number hasn't changed, I think, since Medicaid may have been established. It's been a long time. And
you upped it, the ABLE Act upped it to what, $13,000
per year that you can put aside, up to $100,000 that you can set aside for an individual.
But among the disabled population, if only 17% only 18% of them work, have jobs. Did you do any studies on how many people will be able to put aside that kind of money?
Well, there have been some analysis done. That's where I think we need to build on it, and that's what Able 2.0 is about. So for a family that can set aside money tax-free, that's great. But maybe have an individual that can get a job. We just visited the Capitol Candy Shop, okay? So I took a group of members, Republicans and Democrats, and we went and visited the Capitol Candy Shop, okay? And they had just hired a young lady with Down syndrome. And she's so excited to have this job. And the employer, as well as the colleagues, were also talking about what a positive influence she had been on the entire business, this little candy shop, because she was just so excited. She came to work every day, enthusiastic, dedicated, and it had really lifted morale. So that was great to hear. Now, under Able 2.0, she could take her paycheck and actually put it into an Able account. So it would be protected, so she wouldn't be threatened to lose whatever the government program may be, right? So it gives her an opportunity to get some experience, get in there and prove herself and see what she can do. And so that's why I think this Able account is so powerful. And I think we all recognize that a job is so, it's so defining in our lives, and that it's so much more than a paycheck. It's what gives you purpose and dignity. And there are millions of people with disabilities that would like to have the opportunity to work. I've worked very closely with Senator Harkin through the years, and he's since retired, but we, a couple of years ago, hosted a summit that was focused on addressing the barriers for those with disabilities to work.
Why is it that only 18% of them do work? Is there
so
just
much
overwhelming discrimination in the workplace?
I believe that it is more about a fear of losing the benefits that they have. So whether it is Social Security disability, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's some of these other programs, the fear is, that they're well-intentioned programs, but it means that it's all focused on not losing these benefits. And we need to just open it up. We need to say, okay, maybe a ramp up. That's what I'd like to see. Rather than it being all or nothing, either you're on these programs or you're not. Say, okay, we want to provide some incentives for you to get into the workplace, and so that there would be an opportunity to ramp off these programs. I think that's part of it. Another part of it is that for some employers, they think that it is going to be very costly to hire someone with disabilities. And you hear a lot about accommodations. Maybe it's a computer, or maybe it's a workspace, or different things that they might have to do in order to accommodate someone with disabilities in the workplace, and they say, oh, it's just too much. When companies actually do it, Walgreens is a great example. Walgreens has really embraced hiring those with disabilities, and it started out in the warehouse. And over the years, they have found that these individuals are such good employees that they want to now bring them up front. They want to open it up to more jobs in their stores all across the country. And it's a great story that needs to be told to more. And yes, it might mean some accommodations, some minor accommodations, but in the whole scheme of things, they're bringing they're having such a positive impact that they want to do more. I think.
What about what disabled people earn when they are in the workforce? Are their earnings comparable to so-called abled people, or are they lower?
Well, I think they should be comparable. I think they should be paid based upon the work that they're doing in the workforce. And I also think that with so many veterans returning, I've met a number of veterans who lost limbs or have other challenges. I think that there's been a big emphasis on hiring veterans, and that we're seeing a guy from back home, Scotty Smiley, Sergeant.
What a great last name.
Scotty Smiley. He was blinded in Iraq, lost his eyesight with an IED, right?
Right.
And he became the first blind Army officer ever. And it was one of those things that they wanted to just have him fill out the form, sign the paperwork that he was 100% disabled, right? And his wife in that moment just said, I just can't sign this paper. I just have to think there's something more. And so she didn't sign it, and they went through a process where he stayed in the Army, and he was able to be repurposed, put in a different role, and still lead and be a contributing member of our military. And that's the way we need to be thinking. That just because, I think in the past it would have just been, okay, you are disabled, 100% disability, we'll take care of you, right? Let's think about what you can do. It makes you have to think a little more creatively, but that's the way we need to be thinking and focusing more on the ability. And I think where we've been the last 10, 15 years with our military and the focus on hiring those with the veterans and recognizing, my goodness, they have amazing training. They have great skills that they bring to...
And they're so much more appreciative than many other people in the workplace. I want to ask you about the women in the House. There are 84 now women in the House, and 22 of them are Republicans. Why is that? Why is it that more strong women such as yourself haven't run for Republican federal offices?
Well, it's encouraging that we're seeing more run all the time, and we need more to run. I think for a lot of women, and I hear this when I'm trying to recruit women to run, they've just never thought about it. They're busy in their families and their communities, and for a lot of women, they just have never thought about running for office.
And why is that more true of Republican women than Democratic women, would you say?
Well, it's still relatively new across the board. I mentioned I'm the 200th woman ever to serve in the House of Representatives, and that was in 2004. So out of 11,000 people who have served in the House. So it's still relatively new. We are celebrating this year the 100th anniversary of the first woman who ever served, Jeanette Rankin, who was a Republican from Montana.
And who voted against entry was the only representative to vote against entry into World Wars I and II.
That's true. So I think it's great to be celebrating that. I think about my mom, who, when she was deciding what she wanted to do, and thinking about college, she basically thought it was between nursing and teaching, right? That was my mom, which is just one generation, right?
Right.
And so I'm excited that we have more women serving. And yes, we need more Republican women to answer the call. Absolutely.
How much time are you able to spend doing that?
Well, I was very involved in 2010 recruiting women. I was on the recruitment team. This year, Elise Stefanik, who is the youngest woman ever elected from New York, is chairing our recruitment. She's the first woman to actually chair recruitment in the House, so I'm excited that she's in that role. I do find that a lot of women just have never thought about it, and to a certain degree, they still need to be asked. Now, it's encouraging to see more women doing it. Women, I often find that we look for models. We look for others who have done it, and we say, okay, she did it, I can do it. And we need more models. And so it's good that more are running. But they also, a lot of them is just not on their radar screen. So when I just called a lady last week and was talking to her about running for Congress. And she's talking about her, her family, her job, and she's just like, how is this going to work? Like you started at the beginning. And so I think as they see more doing it and they can talk and ask those kind of questions, my experience was one where I was encouraged to do this, and I'm not sure. I've often wondered if I would have ever just said, okay, I'm going to run for Congress. I was encouraged to do it, and then I was single, so that made the family. I kind of eased into the family side of it, and we've figured out how to do it like a lot of other working moms.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us this week. That's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/tothecontrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.